to Ask Logicool. Today I'm talking to Greg Hughes, Superintendent of the Khartoum American School, which is one of many international schools for expats who want their children to have a quality education while working in another country. Greg is an old mate. We went to university originally together, both learning how to teach. I went off in my direction, which many of you know about, and he then followed his particular direction. So Greg, can you tell me just a little bit about your career?
Well, it's definitely been an interesting career, Darren. As you know, I've moved around the world quite a bit. But I started a long time ago as a teacher back in Australia. I worked a little bit in the outback, and then I spent 6 years in the western suburbs of Sydney. And then, for some reason or other, I decided to give international teaching a try. And so what I did then was I looked up a few resources, and I finally got myself a job in Istanbul. And to be honest with you, Darren, there was no turning back. It was a wonderful career move. It was a good chance to see the world. And so I started working in Turkey, which I love very dearly. It was a very nice country. It was a nice place to live. And I stayed there for 4 years. And then after I worked for 4 years in Turkey, I then decided to change countries. I moved to Oman, which is in the Middle East, as you know. From there, I had a couple of years in Sri Lanka, which was exciting, at the Overseas School of Colombo. And then my African adventure began. I then moved to different countries in Africa, where I worked as a PE teacher. I worked as the principal of a school. I then worked as the director of a school, and eventually I was appointed as the superintendent of Khartoum American School. In Africa, I worked initially in Mali, which was a fantastic country on the west coast of Africa. Well, actually, it's not on the coast; it's a bit inland, but it was a wonderful little adventure. Lots of history, lots of culture. It was a fantastic place to live. From there we went down to Zambia, which again was very different, but a unique and wonderful part of the world. And then from there we moved to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was exciting. It was a wonderful opportunity for our family as well. And then I've only just recently finished a stint in Guinea-Conakry, which again was exciting, and I think that's what appeals to a lot of people who teach and work overseas, is the excitement. And so now I'm heading off to Sudan, where I'm going to be taking up the post of superintendent, as I said. So it's been definitely a long career, and hopefully I've got a few more stops left in me yet, Darren.
Okay, so specifically what does a superintendent do? Obviously you don't teach anymore, so...
No, that's correct. I mean, the superintendent, I guess, would best equate to a headmaster back in Australia. I have a couple of principals who do a lot of the work in terms of the academics, and the superintendent is more in charge of overseeing the whole school. So everything from maintenance right through to dealing with issues with children, welfare issues, discipline issues, etc. But also just making sure that the school runs smoothly and that every facet is going the way it should be. In international schools in particular, we have our own different set of challenges, and in particular we have to sort out visas and we have to sort out apartments for our staff, and so there's a lot of peripheral things that actually take up the time of a superintendent. But I guess in essence I'm accountable to the school board. The school board hired me. They're the ones who check that I'm doing a good job at running the school, and basically my job is very diverse in that I've got quite a lot of things that are on my plate that I've got to deal with. One of the big jobs, or one of the big challenges for a superintendent working overseas, is actually recruiting and getting good quality staff, people who want to be there, people who are dedicated to the children, and people who are flexible are all the qualities we look for in teachers who we recruit. And obviously, being a Middle Eastern / African country, we get great teachers in, but we have difficulty holding on to them. And I think the challenge is, with the continual turnover, it's good to continually be getting different but still solid teachers to come and work with the children.
So specifically for anyone who wants to pursue a career in international schools, how do you get into the job? What's the recruitment process, like interviews and that sort of thing, but how do you actually apply?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let me just say, if somebody is thinking about coming into international education, I would endorse it wholeheartedly. I think it would be the best career move they've ever made. When you move into international education, not only do you get to see different parts of the world, but you also get to work in different educational systems and at the same time you're working with some really fine colleagues, fine institutions, but more importantly the children are just lovely. I think for me, having worked in Australia and then worked overseas, I think that when you get a group of children who've travelled the world, they understand what education is going to do for them in the future, and they really respect and are looking forward to their days of school. I think that's one of the things that stood out to me when I first started working overseas. But getting back to your question, I mean, how do you recruit? How do you get involved? There's many different ways. Most people go through recruitment agencies. There's several very good recruitment agencies out there. Search Associates is a very good agency, as is International School Services. Even here in Australia we have a gentleman who runs a company called Triost, and they're also a fantastic entry point into meeting international schools and getting yourself a position. I think what I spend a lot of time doing is vetting potential candidates who just write me directly. They ask me if there's any vacancies, and then from that point forward I'll try and ask them to attend one of these recruitment fairs and we can set up some interviews. But it's varied. I mean, for my career I think I've used 3 or 4 different agencies, and in some instances I've just contacted the school by my own volition. And I think the most important thing is you've got to be keen, you've got to be eager, and you've got to be proactive in actually searching out these positions. The recruitment fairs, they're held in different parts around the world. Next year I think I'll be flying to Cambridge in the United States, as well as possibly Bethesda. There's a few different ones we go to, and ideally if we can match the needs of our school with the needs of the teachers out there, I think that's the goal of every international school, is to find yourself a good match between who would fit into your school and who would do a fantastic job meeting your needs as well.
So the basic requirement would be the Bachelor of Education, just like the school system here, or? Yeah,
without question. I think one of the things we look for is obviously a quality teacher, somebody who would be able to teach the job. That's obviously be the first criteria. But as well, there's other things that we look at as well. If you're in a very small community, you need somebody who's going to fit into that community. You also need people who are a little bit flexible. Flexibility is something that all international schools need. If somebody comes over to an international school expecting it to be just like Australia, they're going to be in for a little bit of a shock. And I think once they come over with that sort of mentality, they're obviously going to be disappointed, because no place in the world is like Australia. If people would like everything to be like Australia, my advice to them is to stay in Australia. But if you are looking for something different and you're prepared to go out there and be flexible, I'm sure that there's plenty of opportunities for you out there. I think Australian teachers in particular are very, very sought after in international schools, simply because they are very flexible. I think Australian teachers, Australians in general, have a very good laid-back attitude, and that demeanour suits people in international schools. This is Greg Hughes. I hope you're enjoying listening to this small interview. This is the first part of a 3-part series. If you are looking forward to the second part, I'm sure it'll be on air in the next 2 weeks.